Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Ann Stenquist, and she is a spending coach who teaches women how to become unshoppable so they can afford the life they want with the money they already have. She teaches how to overcome the urge to shop by teaching why we shop and how to stop spending before it happens. And she is passionate that all women deserve to find the money, not just to survive, but also to thrive. Welcome, Ann. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your history. How did you come to become a spending coach? What was that process like?
Well, it was born out of necessity. I became a big spender and I realized that I was quickly spiraling out of control with spending. I don't think I ever got to like the addiction point, but I definitely wasn't in control of my spending. I felt like I had to meet that need. And I tried to budget, I tried to fix our finances, and I just couldn't make a budget work. And so I really sought out to find why we buy and why it felt like such a need and why it's not it is a need for some and it's not for others. It just was like this big mystery to me. And what I found was amazing. And it's like, why are people not talking about this? This is the root cause, and no one talks about it. They just say, make a budget or stop spending. And those didn't help me. So I just was on this mission to fix the root cause of spending.
So I'm curious, with your budget, like, do you have a variable income? Is that why it was difficult for that?
No, so it was a
What was that
set
like?
income. It was predictable. It was like on paper, my budget worked, but we don't spend on paper. We were spending with
Got
real
it.
emotions, real stresses. And so what was happening was the budget itself was fine. I just wasn't sticking within those spending limits. And so I was overspending. That way it made it so I couldn't save. There wasn't any money left over to save. So that's where the breakdown was happening. It wasn't the budget, it was I was spending and I wasn't aware of just how much I was spending. And it was born out of necessity because we were hit with a bunch of medical expenses with my chronic illness, and my shopping wasn't the cause of our checking account plummeting, but it was a contributing factor. And so I just was forced to look at what got me to this point, what got me spending so out of control. And I decided to look at my spending, not variable expenses, not fixed expenses, outside of bills, outside of all of that. It was just spending. And that's where I saw, oh my word, I'm spending hundreds of dollars on things that I don't even care about, like eating out and buying conveniences, buying clothes that I don't need, that I won't fit into yet. Things were just being bought without really noticing because they're wrapped into the grocery store purchases. We go to Walmart and don't buy just groceries. We go to Target and don't buy the one thing we need. We buy 10 things. And so there's sneaky purchases that are wrapped up in traditional expenses that we don't see. And that's where I really wanted to learn, how do I stop this spending before it happens? And a budget kind of looks at the past month. They don't really look at like how to stop that spending before it happens.
So how did you, number one, discover it, especially if it's sneaky, right? And then what steps did you take to curb that spending?
Sure. So, like I said, I was looking back at the spending, just spending, and I started noticing trends and patterns in my spending. So, what was happening for me was I was going to not one, not two, but a few Rosses in one night, and I was looking for clothing and accessories, items to make me feel good, items to make me look good. And then I would go to the DI and thrift stores and buy bargains. And so I kept noticing these trends in my spending. And that's when I wondered, are these trends unique to me or are they unique to everyone that struggles with overspending? And what I found is that everyone has a primary spending type, or what I call the six spending types, and it is their primary urge to spend. And for me, it was emotions. When I feel great, when I feel terrible, I want to either reward myself for feeling great or I want to pick myself up when I'm feeling down. So my spending reflected those emotional needs. For others, it's the bargain. For others, it's I need to buy necessities. I need to stockpile. I need to have security and stuff so I don't go without. So it depends on what your trigger is, what your spending type is. For me, it was emotional. And then once I realized that, and we can go into the psychology a little bit later, but what I started to do was I started to look at what I was buying, those sneaky purchases. So I would highlight items that weren't planned and I would just keep track of those, but I would write why I bought it, not just how much I spent. I would write, I went into Target for groceries, but I ended up buying a cute decoration in the $5 bin. And then I ended up buying a blouse for $10. And I wrote, it was such a good deal on both of them. It was such a good deal. I couldn't pass it up. And I really wanted that color blouse, and it was a good deal. So I wrote the justification. And it's really important to capture those justifications because that's what we tell ourselves in the moment. When we're not looking at our budget, we're thinking, this is really cute. I've got to have it. The logic is out the window. We just justify things. And so I started recognizing that we make these justifications. We change our plan in the moment because it's like it doesn't fit what we want right then. And it really became empowering to see all this money is going to places I don't care about. Why don't I redirect this to places I do care about?
I bet that was really enlightening to just see how much. But I've never met anybody who actually wrote down that justification of why they purchased that. I mean, what a great thing to do. I just think that's phenomenal. And I
Yeah,
really want to get into your six types. So let's get into that a little bit in just a second. But I'm wondering, there's a lot of psychology then in spending. Can
yeah,
you talk a little bit about that?
absolutely.
Yeah, so what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, there's a reason for why we do everything and we just aren't aware of it. And I kept reading in finance books. I literally typed in Google, how to stop spending before it happens, and nothing came up. It was just like budgeting advice. And I was the only psychology part they brought up was dopamine. They were like, we shop to feel better. And I was
Mm,
like, okay, there's so much more to that. Like I do more than want to feel better. Like there's an urge, there's this drive to shop that like seems uncontrollable. And so I started to look at like what drives the brain's need for dopamine. Why do we even have that need? What drives that urge? And dopamine, it actually drives us to pursue basic needs. So our basic needs are food, water, shelter, and human relations. And those today and in hunter-gatherer days, those kept us alive. And so dopamine is really it motivates us to pursue those needs for survival. What happens though is an emotion is triggered in our brain and our brain reacts. So hunger is actually an emotion and it triggers in our brain and we automatically go through the processes of I need to get my hunger met so I'm no longer without that need. And what we're supposed to do with, let's say, the anger of anxiety, let's say that, or the emotion of anxiety, let's say that I'm feeling anxious. Instead of saying, well, when I felt anxious before, I've just gone shopping or I've gone on my phone, I've started drinking. Instead of doing what we always do, we need to say, why am I feeling anxious? Am I running away from something? Am I feeling uncomfortable? Am I avoiding something in my life? Because what can happen is false alarms can be triggered where we think that we're feeling one thing, but we're actually not. It's a deeper reason. And so that's what I found so fascinating was we're not taught this. We're not taught that there's an emotion triggered in the brain and the brain just wants to fix it. That's all it wants to do so that you can survive and thrive. But our way of fixing things is not always the way to fix the root problem. It's usually just to put a band-aid on things until the fire's put out and we can move on. And so a good analogy is with the brain is there's an alarm going off like a fire alarm, and that's a signal that something is wrong. Now, with a fire alarm, you have to go investigate. You have to see where, is there a fire? Where's this alarm going off and why? Is something on that's not supposed to be? Is there actually a fire? Is there smoke? We have to do those same things with our brain. Like, is there something wrong or am I just feeling this feeling for no reason? Is it a false alarm?
That's super fascinating. The whole time you were talking, I was reminded of a time. So I'm not a shopper, so let me just preface this with that. In fact, shopping makes me sleepy. Like I know
Really? Oh,
it does.
interesting.
Like it's the most bizarre thing, and I can pretty much count on 15 minutes into shopping, I start yawning. And it's like it's the most bizarre thing ever. And it's not something that I particularly enjoy doing. But I and so I took your test and I'll get into you could probably guess what I was just
Yeah.
off of that comment.
Yes.
But this one time I was really, really upset and I thought, well, I'm going to go shopping because that's going to make me feel better. And what was so fascinating is because I did it for the wrong reasons for me, it I bought two different shirts and those shirts forever reminded me of a time when I felt terrible and I
Mhm.
hated those shirts
Yeah.
because it didn't satisfy that need inside of me, you know?
Yep.
And so that's I think that the psychology behind shopping is super, super fascinating.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the six different types. So I'll let you explain each one.
Sure. And I actually just wanted to comment on that experience. That's such a good experience because you said the objects I bought didn't really meet the need. And so
Mhm.
you never really used them. And the brain thinks that it got what it wanted. You wanted something, you went shopping, you fulfilled that need. And the dopamine we get from buying something, we associate that with the item itself. But you just demonstrated that that's not true. It's not the object because it just left sitting in your closet and it didn't bring that joy.
Yeah.
Our brain thinks that it's the object, but it's really we got what we wanted and we no longer want anything else for just a brief moment. We're content and our brain thinks that it's the object. It's easier to reach contentment after you buy something than it is to find peace within yourself and like
Yeah.
within the brain. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that leads perfectly into the spending types. So, the first is the necessity spender. And the necessity spender, they spend most of their money on things needed for the household, and it's usually for family members and very close friends. And for the necessity spender, they primarily buy necessities, which is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But what can happen is their need for security in things and stockpiling things, having enough because they're scared about scarcity and not having what they need of things that they use regularly, that is a very real fear. And so they feel that need to secure themselves with the things they need for basic necessities of daily life. And so it's that balance of, you're buying those necessities, but are they controlling you? Are you feeling this need when there isn't really a logical reason for why?
Hmm.
And then we have the bargain spender, and they primarily spend their money on bargains. And for them, it's not the item necessarily, it's the price. So they see the bargain and then they justify it's such a good price. I don't want to miss out on this deal. And it's kind of like the reason and purpose for the item comes after. They think it's such a good deal. I'm going to get it and then I'll find a way to use it. I'll find someone to give it to. It's the
But you
price
just can't
over.
pass it up, right?
No, you can't pass
Yeah.
it up. Because what if you need it? And for them, it's the price. And it's look at all the money I saved instead of all the money I spent. And for them, they crave financial security. They crave security through I may not be able to control all my finances. I may not be working, contributing a physical paycheck, but I can control our money based on bargains, which is not a bad thing, but they end up mostly buying things they don't need just because it's a bargain. And then we have the emotional spender, which I touched on. I'm an emotional spender, and the emotional spender spends most of their money during times of heightened emotion. This can be positive or negative. So if you got a raise at work, it's like, I deserve to treat myself. Or if you didn't get the raise at work, it's like, I want to make myself feel better. I deserve this. And so you buy during those times of heightened emotion. And for emotional spenders, there's a need for either love and belonging or a need for respect. And they don't have that feeling within themselves, that confidence. And so they're buying things to kind of give them that sense of love and belonging or that sense of like uh I should say like self-esteem.
Or self-worth.
And
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Self-worth, absolutely. And then we have the impulsive spender. So they are driven by items that are either low in stock, so the scarcity mindset, or it's a unique characteristic. And for them, not buying something and not having it when they need it is a very real threat. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense. If I need this, I want to have it. So I'm going to buy it. And a lot of the times the justification is, well, I'll just buy it and take it back if I don't want it or don't need it. And it's like, I said that to myself. I'm like, why am I buying something that I literally am saying, oh, I may return this?
Right.
That's like a little, oh, red flag, you may not actually want this. And so for them, it's that I want to have what I need when I want it, that security. And then we have the passive spender. They are not motivated by money. Money doesn't hold value for them. So they will buy random things. It doesn't really matter what it is because when they have that option and compare it to money, money isn't valuable. So that thing automatically takes precedent. That is what they buy because money isn't valuable for them. It's not motivating, I should say. And then the last is the saving spender. And it sounds like an oxymoron, but the saving spender, they have characteristics of both a saver and a spender. We all go through periods of saving and spending, but for the saving spender, it's very cyclical. So you can like plot on the line graph and see all the money you're saving, 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 and then you spend, 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 and save, save, save. And usually those ups and downs are triggered by, oh, I'm spending so much, I need to save. Or, oh, I've saved so much, I need to spend on myself because I haven't treated myself in a long time. And for them, they're kind of at war within themselves where they want to save, but they're also like, you only live once, you've got to live your life and use the money you work so hard for. So, and those are within each spending type, they're still broad categories and they're general descriptions of what's going on inside, but every single one is tied to a need that's not being met. And I reference those through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's those needs that we need, those basic needs for food, water, shelter, human relations, love and belonging, self-esteem, and then self-actualization. And each of the spending types relates back to those basic needs. And that's why it feels like a need, even though it's not. We feel like it's a need, we justify it, and then it's already bought in our mind. And so it's already purchased. It's just really fascinating. And that's what I can't believe no one talks about this because you're just putting a band-aid on a problem if you're just saying, oh, I won't spend this month, or oh, I'll get rid of the apps to buy things on my phone. That's a temporary band-aid because you're going to find a way to buy it. It's just a matter of time.
That's it. Yeah. As you're going through that, I was like, oh my gosh, my son is a total saver spender. Like he will save till he's got thousands of dollars and then he will blow so much of it. And I'm like, why would you, and it's
Yes,
on
he
things that
saves so
like
much.
he values, but I'm like, really?
Yeah.
You would spend it on that. But he likes that. And then he'll spend all that money and then he'll go, okay, I've spent enough. I need to save again. So you're right. It is a conglomeration of both different types.
Yeah.
So you probably guess I'm a necessity
Yep,
spender.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, and that's total opposite of you. You're like, why are you doing
I
this?
know, and like
Let us
it drives
see.
me crazy. I'm like, oh, and it's
Yep.
like, so his goal is to have a library. Like he wants, so a library
Uh,
is like a technical library is having 1,000 books. And so he purchases books, and I'm like, just get him at the library.
mhm.
Like you don't know, but
Like you
that's
don't
his goal,
need
right?
that.
And
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
makes him happy to have this, and I think he's actually reaching. So he has several different bookcases, and so that's what he buys too. He buys furniture to hold his hobby, right?
yep,
And I at when he was first doing that, it just like it really hurt my heart. You know?
yes.
Yeah, because I was like, "Oh my goodness, like you don't need all of that." Why, and I'm the one who's constantly throwing things out.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting for me is if I have to, well, I'm a lot better about this now, but back when we had a whole lot of financial issues. And so I think I'm part of this is
Like
because of my history.
recover. Yes.
Right? Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Um, my daughter wanted this pair of shoes, and we remember the situation a little bit differently, but they were like an $80 pair of shoes. And it just, oh, that was so hard. And so we were in line. I remember this, that we were in line at JCPenney's, and she's all excited, and I'm like having a heart attack. And and it was so bad. Like I was actually starting to have a panic attack because in my mind, I'm like, well, we can go to Walmart and get a $10 pair of shoes. Why do I need to
Right.
spend an extra $70? When I felt like could not justify it.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad about this, but I finally turned to her and I said, I can't do it. Like I can't do this. I can't, I cannot purchase this pair of shoes. I can't justify it spending this much money. And
Yeah.
I have since purchased more expensive pairs of shoes because I felt like I needed them. And in my mind, I didn't feel like it was as enough of a necessity to
Mhm.
justify that. And so it's kind of one of those bad, not bad, but mommy moments that I feel bad about. Right?
I have plenty of those.
Yeah, yeah,
I in fact,
exactly.
I was telling my husband, I was like, I'm so worried. Oh, there's a plane flying over. I was telling my husband, I'm so worried we're messing up our kids. And he was like, oh, I know we're messing them up.
Right, right.
He was like, I'll
Yeah,
be there to fix them with whatever we messed up with. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we all have those moments. But I love that you brought that up because it's that justification piece. Because
Hmm.
even within the necessity, you could say anything, a house is a necessity. I need it for shelter. But it's like you can justify the house you can afford, or you can justify, well, I'm going to have a bigger family in 10 years. Let's buy the bigger house. So there's even justifications within those spending types.
Absolutely.
It's so key to crucial to pick up on those justifications we tell ourselves, because once we give a reason, it's like fact to us. And that's like dopamine actually. So it motivates us to pursue what it wants, but then it also turns off the logic side of our brain. And so, I mean, what defense do you have? Like you've justified it. And we're really good about moving money around in our brain. We're
Yes.
saying, I'm going to buy this, but I'm going to be really good this month and I'm not going to spend on this and this. But then we just do the same thing. We spend more. We don't see that transaction of I spent money here, so I can't spend it here. And we've lost sight of once I spend this $10, that $10 is physically gone. And digitally, it is gone. But we don't see that. We think, well, I don't need to buy one or the other. I'll just buy both. When you don't realize that you already spent that money, it's been spent, but not in our minds. We move it around. We move it in many different places.
Right. So once you know what your type is, what do you do with that information?
Yeah, great question. So, for you or for your son, that is a great example with like the savings spender because that's not talked about a lot. And so, what you need to realize is, okay, he is going through well, I'm curious now. So, with the savings spender, is it always around books usually, or is there other
No.
things city kind
There's
of.
other things too. Yeah.
So yeah, so for the saving spender, it's going to vary. And that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure. It's going to vary because it depends on the cycle they're in, and it
Hmm.
also depends on what their interests are at that time. And so for him, he is at war within himself based on the saving spending nature of his spending. He's at war between I want to enjoy my money, but I also want to save the money. And so once you
100%.
recognize,
He
yeah,
totally is like that.
yeah, and I totally get that. I'm all the spending types, so I can't
Right.
judge. And so he's got to find what he wants from his money, like overall. What's his big picture? Because he's only thinking about things in these cycles. And once he gets an idea of like, what do I want long term? It's how is this cycle going to benefit my long term goal? And for the saving spenders, oftentimes I recommend having automated transactions so that no matter what cycle you're in, you always have money going to savings and you always have money going to spending. That way, if you're spending that month, that money is coming out of the spending category, not out of the savings.
That's a good idea. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so just recognizing and finding that deeper need. Like he's at war within him in himself, so you can't really depend on the cycle you're in. You have to find that deeper reason. For you, it's that necessity. It's very secure for you to think save your money, have it for the rainy day. But for him, it's like, no, I want to be in the middle. So you want to kind of find the middle ground of what is motivating for him, but also what is enjoyable for him so he doesn't feel like he has to go through those extremes.
Well, and I really like that you bring up enjoying life so that it's not just, hardcore, stick to your budget. I mean, obviously we need to stick to the budget, but
Yeah.
put in those fail safes so that we're able to do that with and enjoy our lives without jeopardizing our financial freedom.
Right. And that was born out of I have guilted myself into doing a lot of things my entire life. And I got to a point where I was like, no, I don't want to guilt myself into changing my spending because it's the one thing I can do for me as a mom of young kids. It's like I've given up everything. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to give this up. Same with dieting. I was like, I don't want to give up sugar. I hate that. And it was actually I was doing a calorie counting macro plan, and my coach, he said he has a sweet tooth, and he said every day I plan my sweets first. I have this amount and I plan my sweets first, and then I plan around that. And that was life changing for me. I was like, oh, I'll do that in a heartbeat. I mean, I will eat beans and rice if all day if it means I get to eat my sweets.
Right.
And it's just that, I mean, that was so motivating for me. And so once I was pretty anti-budget. I'm gonna admit, I was like, no, it feels restricting. It doesn't work. I was like out to defame the budget because I was like, it doesn't work. But what I realized was more powerful was empowering yourself, seeing that money that you're spending without even thinking on things you don't care about, putting that towards what you really care about. That is where the power comes because then you have a comparison point. You have, I am going to buy this or I'm going to buy this. Which one do I want more? And for some people, they need to have smaller goals more frequently, like having a big goal to save for, a vacation that's going to be $5,000. If that's going to be a few years, maybe you need to save for me, it was I wanted to afford pre-made meals so that I didn't have to devote that time. But I was like, oh, it's too expensive. And yet our food budget was above $1,000 every month. It's like, no, 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 no. Like put that money toward what you want, and then that extra money doesn't get spent unintentionally because you kind of have to plan for your weakest moment. Like I started realizing that with food, it was like, I'm not going to go from eating out all the time to cooking everything from scratch. I have to go and find a middle ground. And for me, that was the freezer meals that you can put in the crock pot. That was the middle ground. It was cheaper than going out to eat every night. It was more expensive than groceries, but the groceries we were just buying and then eating out anyway. So it was like we're wasting money both ways. And so you just have to find something that really motivates you that is quote unquote selfish, but something that makes it makes it less tempting to spend in the moment because you have something of greater value.
Well, and having that knowledge so that you can do that value comparison,
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be huge. And if you don't gather that data, then you really can't make that educated decision.
No.
And so
Yeah,
I think that's it. That's really crucial to do that.
it
And
is.
I've done that before too, where I've gone through my budget and gone, holy crap, what am I spending my money on? And even though I am a necessity buyer, like to me, a necessity, if I'm out and about and I'm hungry, I will buy
Yes.
the meal
It's a
because that's a
necessity.
necessity for me.
It's food, but then the
Yeah,
justification comes. It's like, well, what do you buy? Do you buy the really nice stuff? Yeah, and that's again where it takes the judgment out of it because everyone has needs that are not being met, and you can't argue that. You can't say, "Oh, shame on you for having these needs."
right.
I mean, it's just, I'll wait for this to pass really quick. Oh, everyone has needs, and you can't really argue that. And so it really just comes down to I have these needs. I can buy anything I want, but I can't buy everything. So what do I want to buy? What do I want for my money? And once you have that perspective, it's interesting, actually. Our brain is not good at assessing value if you just have one item that you're looking at. It can't say $50 is a good deal, $100 is a good deal. That's why everyone has different like thresholds of how much they spend. Everything is like subjective. It depends on the person. But when it has a comparison point, it can say, oh, that's a good deal. So sales, they always show $50 and then they show 50% off. So you think, oh, that's a good deal. I'm spending 25 instead of 50. That's why fast food, they always have the small, medium, large because there has to be a comparison point. That's why it's so crucial for us with whatever we're buying to have a comparison point. We don't think either or because that's that restriction part and you'll just say no, screw it, I'm going to buy both. You need to think, do I want this or do I want this more? And that's where that value comes into play.
That's really good advice. So I think this marketers use that to their advantage though. I mean, you look at like toilet paper math, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know if you realize, but it was 4 years ago today, with time
Yep.
of recording this, that the world shut down. And so that's when this whole toilet paper math came to light. But truly, because they make all of their equations different, it's really hard to compare that. And so you
Yes.
can't figure out what the deal is or isn't, so marketers definitely use that to their
Well,
advantage.
absolutely. And they also use our needs. I mean, it
Mhm.
was on a prominent marketing sales company that they had Maslow's hierarchy of need and they addressed it. And they said, in your marketing, you have to address a need that people they have the need to belong. They want to be, and they talked about how you're not buying the item, you're buying the respect, you're buying the community, the feeling, the luxury. And I was like, oh my gosh, they know why we buy better than we do.
Yeah. Okay. So since we're talking about shopping now, um, what are your thoughts on couponing?
So I mean, there are positives to couponing. I am not a downer on coupons. I just look at it as time for effort, and
Hmm.
I don't have a lot of time to sit and cut coupons. I have more time to do other things because time is money. So if
Hmm.
you have a good paying job and it's like an hour working an extra hour saves you cutting coupons for 2 hours, then maybe just stick with the one. Stick with working that hour. If couponing is your way of provide because it is you're almost providing an income by cutting those costs. I mean, do coupons. There are, I would say though, the more money is being spent unintentionally and you can save a lot more money than the 25 cents off here, the $2 off here. So I'm not saying get rid of it altogether, but I would say I would look at your other spending first and then get that under control and then add couponing on top of that. You're going to see a lot more bang for your buck. You're going to see a lot more progress that way because we think that it's those little, and it is the little things that add up, But right now, the little things are actually big things. They're those $100 purchases that are adding up in totals of $5 here, $10 here,
Yeah.
$50 here. So I'm all for it. And if that's your way, that's great. Keep doing it.
Well,
But
and I'm not sure you pronounce that couponing or couponing. I think I've heard it both ways. So
I've heard it both ways too.
yeah, so however you want to say that. But yeah, I tried out the whole extreme couponing when, oh gosh, it was maybe, oh, probably 20 years ago, like right when it was
Yep.
first making a big deal, you know. But I found that I was buying things like I had a lot of stuff, but it
Yeah.
was stuff that number one was name brand, and I
Hmm.
could get it actually cheaper by buying the generic. Um, and I just didn't need it. I
Yep.
bought a whole bunch of stuff that I like had
I'm
no use for, you
I'm
know?
so glad you brought that up. And actually, speaking of couponing and the toilet paper math, so I bought it was a bargain because I had a coupon and it was for toilet paper. I bought it and I bought like two, and it was because I had Ibotta, the app that has those digital coupons. I don't know if you use it, but it basically has the coupons digitally. They're the manufacturer coupons, and then you can have like goals. If you redeem 10 bonuses, you get X amount of money. And so it can become very addicting to be like, oh, I look how much money I earned on Ibotta. But anyway, I was trying to get one of these deals and redeeming 10 offers. And so I bought toilet paper. And I mean, it's a necessity. You need it. Great. I saved money on it. And then a couple months later, same thing. It was another offer, another coupon. And so I was like, great, I'm gonna redeem it. And I brought toilet paper home. And my husband was walking up the stairs and he was like, you did not buy that toilet paper. I was like, yeah, like why is that a problem? We need
Yeah.
toilet paper. He was like, you bought single ply. And it was like,
Oh
we
no.
joked that like even in an emergency, we wouldn't use that toilet paper. And no joke, it is still in our storage room, unused. We've gone through the pandemic. It has not been used.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
One ply is
so,
the
but I
worst.
found that very thing with Ibotta. It's there's a threshold, like you have to do something in order to get X amount, but that's where they get you, is you're thinking, look at how much money I'm saving, but also the money that I can earn by redeeming this offer, or look how much I'm saving. But then you have to ask yourself, one, do I need it? Two, do I even want that brand, that name brand? Why can't let's try cheaper. And so, yeah, I've found that a lot, that those coupons are usually for the name brand. And
Hmm.
so maybe you'd be better off just doing the off brand.
Yeah. So what are some like helpful tips that people can use when they, either to save money or to help them stick with their budget? And I know there's a lot of different scenarios. So
Right.
I guess I'm asking for what are like some of the best tips for that?
For sure. So I would first, to just get your awareness, I would definitely take the spending types quiz. It's free. It gives you some basic things that you can start with, but it gives you a place to start because spending is so overwhelming. Budgeting is overwhelming. Spending is overwhelming. And so I don't want you to be in this start stop phase that often happens when we get overwhelmed. And so the spending types quiz, what it does is it identifies the thing that you're primarily triggered to buy and overspending on. And so once you get that label, like, and I don't like the term label, but once you get the result, then you can say, what am I buying that fits under this category? So like impulsive purchases. What am I buying? Why? And now that you know, okay, it's impulsive purchases, then you need to be asking yourself before you even get to the store, why am I going to the store? Do I need something? Do I have something in mind? Or am I going to the store to be inspired? And the store will always inspire you with what you need to buy.
Right. Yeah,
And so
always.
you need to
Right.
just, yeah, ask yourself. And I'm guilty of that too. I'm like, honey, I'm going to go out. I'm just getting out. And I'm like, why am I putting myself in lion territory when I'm like totally unprepared, you know? So just going in, having in mind what you're going for. And when you pick up an item, was I intending to purchase this before I saw it, before I saw the sale? Would I buy this at full price? Do I have a use and purpose for this right now? And then just asking, oh, and with the items that are like either scarce or they have that unique characteristic or a good price and you're worried, what if I miss out on this? Just play that scenario out in your head. It seems like a threat in your mind, but if you think about it, it's like the worst that would happen is I just go without it or I go back out and see if I can get it again. That's it. But the other alternative is I spend the money and I'm out the money. And, it's just, you just need to really think through, like, worst case scenario, think through, like, what is my intention of going? And you'd be surprised how much awareness that can bring to just the simple act of getting in your car. But therein lies the problem of the barrier. There's a barrier to getting in your car and going somewhere, but there's no barriers with shopping on your phone. And so you have to be extra on guard when you're asking yourself, why am I going on my phone? It's usually to avoid an emotion that's been triggered, but we don't identify the emotion. We just identify with, I'm bored. I just feel bad. I want to just distract myself. Distractions number one. And so distraction usually leads us to our phone, and then that opens up a whole world of possibilities of being shopped to and marketed to. And so just being aware of why you're doing the things you're doing, and that will start to train your brain to recognize those emotions and kind of do some digging as to why am I feeling that way? Did something happen that I'm like upset about, or is there something that I'm avoiding?
So so I'm really interested if somebody wants to work with you, what are the steps that you take them through to figure all of this out?
Sure. Yeah. So that I give those suggestions as places to start because
Mhm.
oftentimes people are like, I'm already aware. I want to just implement one or two things and see if that
Mhm.
works. So that's what I would try. This spending types quiz and then just like being mindful about your emotions
Right.
or if what you're spending your money on is making you happy or if you just feel like you're buying things and it's not making you happy. So that would be a place to start. But when I work with clients, so I always start them with the spending types quiz because that's the best way at identifying what's their primary urge or trigger to spend. Then we can start narrowing down that area. And so once I've narrowed down that area, I have them do what I call the receipt analysis. So they're just highlighting or writing down those items that they didn't plan on purchasing that slipped into their cart. And then you write that justification, what we talked about at the beginning. So you're writing why I bought it. It was on sale. It was a good deal. It was super cute. Only one left. You write those justifications, and then you start seeing trends in what happens when I'm in the store. Once we
Mhm.
I identified what happens in the store, then we want to identify what happens before you get to the store. What happens to trigger that urge? Is it really that you need to go grocery shopping, or is it that you just are feeling exhausted and don't have energy to cook because you're just strung out in every aspect of your life and you just need to get out of the house? And we're identifying those events before the shopping so you can ultimately stop spending before it happens and ultimately just be in control of, yes, I'm going out and spending because I need something, not because I just want something or want to get away from a situation. And the ultimate goal is to become unshoppable. That's what I want for everyone, is to overcome that urge to shop so that you don't feel out of control, feel dependent, and that you're free to just live the life you want with the money you have because you're no longer spending on those things you don't care about. You're spending intentionally, you're spending on things you do care about, and you're able to do that because you're cutting spending elsewhere. And it doesn't feel like you're cutting because you just feel like you are buying the things that you actually want.
Well, that's so empowering, because you're not falling prey to the
Mhm.
whims or to the emotions or to the necessities or whatever. So that's fantastic. How can people contact you if they want to work with
Sure. Yeah, I would love to talk with anyone and everyone. I love any excuse to talk about money and spending. I would just say the best way would be my email, which is moneymakeunder@gmail.com. And so you can contact me anytime with that email, or you can take the spending quiz and it puts you in my email list to get updates on like new information, trainings, coachings, things like that. And you can always email me there. But I also have a Facebook group. If you just want to join the Facebook group, it's free. It's full of a bunch of women that are struggling with the same things, have the same ambitions. And it's like we just are promoting like a safe environment, shame-free, of people that have these struggles that we just haven't had resources. And it's just a very great place to just come and like be seen, be heard, feel like you're not alone in this. And it's primarily females, but men, I mean, anyone's welcome. And so those would be the places on my email or on or at my Facebook group, the Money Make Under community.
And
So,
I'll also include all of that information in the show notes as well as your website where you can access that free quiz. This has been such a unique conversation, and I've never heard of a spending coach, and I think what you offer is really amazing and super helpful.
oh,
And I just wanted to thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been really delightful.
oh, well, thank you for having me. This was such an honor. So thanks so much.
You are very welcome. What a great conversation with Marianne. I really loved her take on the psychology behind shopping, why we do it. And once we understand that why, we gain that knowledge, then we're able to tweak it so that we are put ourselves in the best place financially. I'm so grateful that she took her time out to meet with us today. And I encourage you to check her out. Her quiz is super easy to take, and I just learned a whole lot from myself by taking that. And I think that you will too. And again, knowledge is power. So look for her stuff. You'll see the links in the show notes. And I just hope that you always remember that your purpose is in your story. Take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your